Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I think most of you know me. If you don't, I'm Rich Corsi. It's my honor and pleasure to serve as Dean of the College of Engineering at UC Davis. On behalf of the college, I'm excited to welcome you to our Spring Quarter Dean's Distinguished Speaker event. I have the distinct honor of introducing today's Dean's Distinguished Speaker, Dr. Jayathi Murthy, President of Oregon State University. For this quarter's Dean's Distinguished Speaker event, we're going to do things a little bit differently. After President Murthy gives her presentation, I'll join her back on stage for a follow-up discussion because I have some questions. And then we'll open it up to the audience. But before we get started, let us take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land at UC Davis has been the home of Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: Kachil-Dihi Band of Wintun Indians of the Calusa Indian Community, Quetzal-Dihi Wintun Nation, and the Yocha-Dihi Wintun Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It's been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We're honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. Once again, we're very fortunate to have President Murthy with us today to share her experiences and hopes for women in engineering and also offer insights from her experiences in leadership and higher education. President Murthy is a national leader in higher education, engineering, teaching, research, and service. She's a renowned mechanical engineer and a member of the National Academy of Engineering. Prior to joining Oregon State University as their 16th president, President Murthy served as the first woman dean of the UCLA's Henry Samueli School of Engineering and Applied Science. As dean, she worked to expand access to engineering education at UCLA and led efforts to establish the Women in Engineering at UCLA program, whose mission is to enable the full participation, success, and advancement of women in engineering and in computer science. Outside of academia, President Murthy worked for a decade at New Hampshire-based company Fluent, Inc., a developer of the world's most widely used computational fluid dynamics software, probably a software that many people in this room have or will use. On a personal note, I've had the pleasure of knowing Jayathi for about 15 years now or so, I would say. From our time as department chairs together at the University of Texas, Jayathi in mechanical engineering and myself in civil architectural and environmental engineering. I was so very impressed as one of her chair colleagues at UT in terms of her ability to really transform our mechanical engineering department into a much, much better and dynamic and wonderful department. She's been a friend, she's been an inspiration to me personally, and one of the reasons that I decided to become a dean. So you can blame her for me becoming your dean. So with that, please welcome Dr. and President Jayathi Murthy.
Thank you. Rich, you've been an inspiration to me, and I don't know if any of you have taken classes with Rich. He is an amazing, fantastic teacher, and a fantastic researcher, and I've certainly seen everything you've done through COVID. I was following you as you were leading the entire, clean air movement in classrooms and so on, and what an amazing thing. I can't begin to tell you how happy I am to be here. I'm such a fan of the UC system and all the UC universities and all the wonderful work that they do. And it doesn't hurt you guys at all that it's a beautiful day outside. And so thank you for giving me the time to spend here on campus. I was thinking about what to speak to you about. And I thought maybe I'd tell you a bit of a story about myself, right? And maybe from it glean a few lessons that might be useful in a broader sense. So I grew up in India. I was born in India. I grew up there. I did my undergraduate work in India, came to the US, went to graduate school, decided to stay on, and then from that followed my path into engineering and finally to my position now as president of Oregon State. I come from a middle-class family. We were not poor, but we were not rich either. My father was a civil engineer, worked for Indian Railways. My mother, quite different from the women of her time, was actually a marine biologist by training. Actually went to college at a time when women from my stratum in society, middle class, typically didn't. And so my parents, my mother and father, were both children of Indian independence. They were teenagers when India became independent from the British. And I will tell you that what made my life and my path through engineering was centrally tied to the attitudes that they picked up as teenagers in the middle of a big independence movement were playing out in India, because they were incredibly far-seeing, incredibly modern in their view of what women could be. And I'm convinced that that came from that revolutionary time when everything around them was changing, and they were changing in terms of how they saw the world, and they saw it through an incredibly modern lens. And that's what did it for me. I was never restrained. I mean, I went to a girls' school, and I know how girls, the lives that girls led in India at the time, and all the restrictions that were put on them, and I was never subject to any of that. So, I was allowed to do pretty much anything I wanted, and I wanted to go to engineering school, not because I knew anything about engineering. I really didn't. I knew a little bit. My dad was a civil engineer. But I actually really just wanted to be like my father, because I thought he was the smartest person I knew, and he was the smartest person I knew. And so engineering was something I wanted to do. It wasn't anything that women ever did at that time. I didn't know any women engineers. But my parents were fine with it. And I took the entrance exam to the Indian Institutes of Technology, which some of you perhaps attended. And those are not easy to get into. I was lucky to get in. School was 1,000 miles from home. And again, this would have been utterly unheard of, but they were fine with my getting on a train, doing a 36-hour journey up north to attend a college in which we were 2 women in my class of 250. We were 10 women in the entire undergraduate program. And I was my friend and I were, women number 2 and 3 to ever graduate with a mechanical engineering degree from the institution. Our women's dorm had been built the year before we joined. It was entirely empty except for a few women. So that was, the life. And, it may seem, positively strange and ancient for all the young people in the audience today, but that's exactly what it was. And what made it different, I think, from the lives that American women lead is that, of course, we, lived under extraordinary social restrictions. I mean, men and women didn't mix much at that time in India, and perhaps even now in many places in India. So to be female in that kind of society was also a statement. It was a statement about the status of women and the freedoms that women were allowed to access more broadly, not just in engineering, but in society more broadly. And so, there certainly were consequences from, having to break those boundaries. But I will also tell you that I came away from that experience absolutely enriched, despite all these obstacles, not least because I was surrounded by really brilliant people. Students were great, the faculty were great, and it opened up a world to me that I didn't know existed, and I probably couldn't have gotten that experience almost anywhere. I began to understand what excellence was, what it took to be really good, and what the competition really was. I mean, how smart people were, and what it meant to actually succeed in a world full of smart people. And so for all the trials and tribulations of being, a handful of women in a largely male institution in India, I came away really grateful for the education that I'd had there. When it came time for me to go to graduate school, again, an extraordinary step on the part of my parents. It wasn't at all usual that an unmarried, 21-year-old would be allowed to go off, to the US. We had nobody here, no relatives. You just get on a plane and you go. Nothing that parents of my friends would ever have allowed to do. And my parents were not only fine, they were actually deeply committed to my success. This was, so I came to this country again in pursuit of a research path, which I felt I couldn't get in any other country in the world, and it was such an enormous magnet, that drew me here to the U.S. And I watch now as as foreign students are under all kinds of pressure, and I can't begin to tell you what a big difference it made to my own personal growth, and I hope I made some contributions that actually mattered. So I came here, went to graduate school, decided to stay on, and had a really good experience as a graduate student at a time, again, when women there weren't a lot of women in mechanical engineering. I was the first woman PhD out of mechanical engineering from the University of Minnesota. So again, early times. But the women's movement in this country had already occurred, so the political and the social environment in which in which I entered and where the debates were happening was entirely different and quite eye-opening for me. But work was something else, right? Work hadn't been transformed. So I came to Arizona State University as an assistant prof. Again, the first woman in the department ever to be hired. And these firsts get old after a while. I mean, you can boast about them if you like, but they are hard work because you are really entering spaces where nobody's actually prepared for you. There's a lot of goodwill, and there's a lot of conservatism, and I found it very difficult as an assistant prof to actually ford those spaces because I didn't have a cohort of graduate students my age, and none of those supports existed. So I spent 4 years at ASU, increasingly frustrated, and some of my friends from graduate school came calling. They were going to start a company. They were part of a consulting company, and they wanted to kick off a company. And would I join them? And I said, okay, I'm dropping this whole tenure track thing, and I'm going to leave. And basically went to start a small computational fluid dynamics company out in New Hampshire. Risky enterprise, but we were really, really lucky to be creating a product at the right place, at the right time. The company really took off, and where I joined as employee number 7 in Fluent Inc. It was sold in 2006 had about 800 employees. Currently, it's a part of Ansys Inc., which was just now acquired by Synopsys for $37 billion. Roughly a third of that is really its CFD business. So very amazing experience. I mean, I loved the idea of being in a startup, garage operation. And I will tell you that as a woman, I found an acceptance there that I perhaps would not have found in a much larger company or even in academia, because it was an environment where everybody was needed and everybody's talent was needed, and it was a bunch of young people, so it didn't come with a lot of assumptions. And I found that to be a truly energizing and invigorating experience. We were bought, and I felt at that time that my heart was really in teaching and research, and if I was ever going to come back, it would have to be then, or else I would simply get too old and wouldn't have published, and all of that kind of concern. And so I came back to academics, went to Carnegie Mellon, and then made a bunch of other transitions, swearing up and down that I would never be an administrator. I mean, just never want to do that. And didn't for the longest time. And the decision to go into administration really came from a large center that I was running at Purdue for the National Nuclear Security Administration. And I had a team of extraordinarily talented but very young professors. Most of our team was really assistant profs who were trying to make their way into the world. And I found a real satisfaction in helping them do it and seeing their success, and they were critical to the success of the center. And I will tell you that every one of them has done amazingly well as I watch them grow and find their way. So that happiness, that satisfaction drove me to look for a department chair position at UT Austin, where I had the pleasure of working with Rich, and then moved on to a deanship at UCLA, and finally to a presidency here at Oregon State University. I've learned a lot. One of the wonderful things about that career progression is that every step of the way has been learning. You're taking on bigger and bigger problems. Some of them within your reach, some of them thrust upon you by the world outside. But nevertheless, with the realization that, we have an amazing setup, right? U.S. higher education is such a jewel. I mean, it's the best in the world, and it's the best for a reason. It's figured out how to nurture talent. It's figured out how to teach. It's figured out how to do research, and this really needs protection. I mean, it's not something we can actually give away easily, and certainly not without a fight. And so I find myself in a place where, it is stressful. There's lots to think about. There's money issues, there's legal issues, there are all kinds of things. But it's the place to be, and I'm glad to be. Maybe glad is too strong a word, but I am, I'm at the right place at the right time, and to do the right kind of work. So that's my story. What are my hopes for women in engineering? The first thing, of course, is simply numbers. All right, it comes as a surprise to me, but not quite 50-50 yet. I mean, I used to be one of 1% when I started, so I'm happy to be at. Where are you at, Rich? 30-ish%? Yeah, which is not terrible at all. All right, and it's growing. And so parity would be the first order of business. We are approaching it slowly, but what does concern me there is that it's not even across the disciplines. So I don't know how your numbers are distributed. I remember my UCLA numbers in engineering, big growth in bioengineering, which was actually a super majority. I mean, there was 65% female. Environmental was big, civil and environmental was big. Chemie was growing, but big deficits in mechanical, in electrical, in computer science. So while the averages are up, there's clearly the historical imprint and the cultural imprint of all things mechanical or electrical or whatever. So that's something we need to pay attention to. I do think that agency matters. As numbers grow of women in engineering, I think women have to begin to redefine, and they will begin to redefine what engineering actually is. Right? I'm struck by how tongue-tied a profession engineering really is. It is the most tongue-tied of professions, and the reason it is that it doesn't speak to half of humanity. Right? Literally, half of humanity isn't even in the mix when we think about engineers. And so there are entire classes of problems that remain invisible to us because of the composition of the engineering profession, right? And that really does need to start changing. And as women are empowered in engineering, they will begin to redefine engineering. And I think it's going to be a really good thing for the profession. It's going to be very, very good for the profession to broaden itself and to speak to humanity in a much broader way. I want to say also that leadership matters. I see, of course, engineers more broadly leading through management roles as they move further and further in their careers, which is a good thing, and women do the same thing. But there is really a role for technological leadership for women in engineering, which I don't see quite so much of. I mean, people do it for a while, women do it for a while, and they'll switch or even drop out entirely from engineering, and that needs a whole lot of work. But a lot of women dropping out of engineering, some of it, of course, is the workplace, but it is tied invariably to the domestic situation, particularly as women marry and have children. And so an evolution in domestic roles is indelibly tied to an evolution in the workplace. And those evolutions really have to happen as women assert themselves in the home and in the workplace. So I want to stop there. I know we've got lots of talking to do, but I hope that's given you some context for my own path through engineering, and as we talk, you'll see how that path has influenced my own thinking.
Thank you, Jayathi. And we will now enter the engineering cocktail lounge.
Where's the cocktails,
cocktail.
Rich? Yeah, let's have them. Yeah.
I have a list of questions for you.
Well, I guess I've got a list of answers for you in that case.
Yeah, but I first of all, I really appreciate your sincerity in talking about the need for increasing participation of women in engineering. It's really, really important. So, let's see, my questions. All right, I'm smiling here. All right, Jayathi, as you look to the future and you think about the broad fields of engineering and computer science, what do you see as sort of important emerging technologies or areas, especially over the next 10 to 20 years?
Yeah. Let me start off by saying that the future is what you make it, all right? So what I'm trying to do here is not to prognosticate. I am not saying, well, this is what's in the future, or I'm making a prediction about the future. I've come to realize over time that, everything is in your hands, all right? Yeah, there is an outside environment, but it is up to us to shape the future that we want. So what I'm, going to talk about is the things that we need to do to shape that future. Now, I'll talk about engineering in a minute, but let me talk about something that's really begun to bother me as president of a land-grant public university. Right? So the biggest thing that I see shaping up for higher ed is really this extraordinary loss of trust in higher education. And even, and of course, a lot of that conversation is mediated by what the Harvards do and what the Columbias do and so on, and we see that spill across. And it particularly bothers me because I do see public land grants as a very special kind of institution that's actually delivered enormous amounts of good. So it worries me that we should be seen in this negative light. Now, there's a bunch of different reasons for it. Some of it simply the cost of education. As the cost of education goes up, people become much more reluctant to access higher ed, even though it has a huge payoff. But some of it also has to do with the perception of elitism, right? I mean, even regardless of the political divide, if you look at the history of higher ed, this used to be the domain of rich people. I mean, rich people going in, getting an education, thinking deep thoughts, and then, retiring and living off their, endowments is essentially where this started. And this extraordinary experiment that the US embarked on to absolutely broaden education is an amazing thing, all right? And so I think it falls to us to get closer to the ground, particularly those of us who are in academia, who have who have tenure and job security. We've got to put ourselves in the shoes of the people that are actually accessing our education. And so I keep feeling that we have to really start making a difference on the ground. Yes, there is absolutely a firm place for basic research, but for engineers and for engineering to get much more close to the ground in terms of solving real problems, embedding ourselves into the communities in which we serve is really important. And I do think that land-grant universities have a particular opportunity to get much, much closer to the ground in being of true value to the communities that we serve, right? I think that's a broader imperative that we got to be working on. I mean, in terms of opportunities for engineering, I do think, and some of this is 20 years, some of this is much longer, it may help us to think in terms of the abiding problems that we are actually going to be called upon to address. So I have to say, political considerations aside, climate change, all things climate and sustainability are going to be a running theme, whether we like it or not, whether the political climate allows us to address them or not. That is a fact of life for us for the next 20 years. And we've got to double down on all kinds of things, workable engineering solutions. We've got to, it's coming up on us fast. So, a 100-year time frame on the kind of research we're going to take on is probably not useful. We're going to have to focus very hard on the 20 to 25-year time frame. Transitional technologies are going to be really important. We have to make a change from where we are to where we want to be. So those things are going to be important. And related issues around food and water are going to be important. All of these are standard fare for UC Davis, they're standard fare for OSU, and we've got to continue. The other big driver, I think, is actually population aging and population collapse. That's a big fact of life that's shaping up. I was looking up numbers for China, right? So China recorded its first ever decrease in population in 2022, right? It's not going to decrease real fast in the 20-year time frame from 1.4 billion to 1.3 billion. That's not big, but it will drop to 800 million. It will halve by 2100. And in this period, in the next 20, 30, 40 years, China will begin to age very substantially, right? India won't. India will actually grow in population until about 2100, and then, but India's fertility rate is already below replacement, right? So you all know what the fertility rate is, right? So if every couple produces a child, that if they produce 2 children, the population over the long term would be flat. Typically, the fertility rate we aim for is something like 2.1 because not everybody has kids or kids don't survive. India is already at 2.01. You wouldn't know this. I mean, India is a big populous country, but India is also setting up for a population drop. The US is at 1.66. If it weren't for immigration, US population would actually plummet very, very quickly. And so the US's population growth is tied centrally to immigration policy, believe it or not, and you can see all the drama around that. If it weren't for immigration, the numbers would really start to fall. Right, so this is a big driver, this population collapse, and from it, there's got to be a lot of thinking in terms of where engineering goes with this. I think aging is an issue, age assist technologies are issues. There are, of course, things like robotics are, they're already playing out in Japan. They're going to play out in much bigger, in much greater measure. Health technologies and all things health and medicine are always going to be big, but particularly with an aging population. And then all the non-engineering issues around policy are going to continue to be extraordinarily big. AI, of course, AI is going to be big. I'm one of those that actually think we're at the early stages of an extraordinary revolution that's going to sweep through. Hard to make predictions about things that are moving so very quickly. In the near term, first of all aspects of engineering are going to be infused by it. We're certainly betting on it at OSU, particularly because of our connection to Jensen Huang, who happens to be an OSU graduate. Betting big on all things AI plus Oregon, AI plus fisheries, AI plus forestry, AI plus ag, AI plus robotics, particularly physical robotics, is going to be a big, big investment for us. That's as big as my crystal ball gets. I'm going to stop there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think your comments about engineers needing to be on the ground, I think plays to the whole concept of socially responsible engineering,
Yeah.
which I know is really important to our college, and it's part of our historical ethos, and I know a lot of people in the audience here shaking their heads yes. And so I really, really appreciate that. And your crystal ball is a great mix of things we need to be thinking for the future.
I know you're doing a lot of this already from all the conversations we've had.
Yeah. So, second question, a little different. This is focused on academia. Now, do you see a shift, in your mind, do you see a shift in traditional engineering and computer science departments, a transformation of engineering and computer science departments in the future? Or how do you see that shift, if you do see one?
Okay, so, this is not a new realization. I've felt this for some time. I'm not so worried about what you call departments or even thinking about different mixes of departments, all right? I'm much more concerned about, the structure of departments at all and all the impediments that it places, right? So I do think that departments are necessary for undergraduate degree granting because they're a label, and employers want to know what they're buying when they employ you, and therefore knowing that a mechanical engineer comes with this kind of expertise and electrical comes with that, I think that's useful, all right? So degree granting, I think departments are great for that. What they're really bad for is actually research. I mean, there's no question that research that's worth doing lies at the intersection of disciplines, and I do feel that departments actually are impediments to the free flow of, it's like a free electron cloud, right? You want to be able to sort of range freely across disciplines, and I don't think departments are good for that. So I've been thinking quite a lot about the kind of structures that can free up the graduate program, free up our faculty to do research, but nevertheless ground our students deeply in some kind of deep enterprise. And so, I'm a great fan of centers and institutes, partly because you can reconfigure them easily. They can live for 10 years and things change. You can make it something else. I feel like every faculty member ought to be a part of some kind of institute or some kind of center where you bring people together, force them to mix, and from that mixture come new ideas and new kinds of energy. So that's really my thinking about it, that free up the graduate enterprise, let them mix, take away all of these rules we have about who can advise whom and who can get a degree from which department, and if you don't have this course in that department, you're not eligible, and we're not going to give you a TA-ship if you belong in that department and you're working with a faculty member here. All of these rules that hold us, that keep us apart, I think really do have to go.
Yeah, great. One more question I want to open up to the audience. I think we'll have a little bit of time for that. So this is about you and your personal journey. As you've moved from being a faculty member to a department chair, to a dean, and now a university president, what have been the big learning moments or learning moment along the way? What have been the aha moments?
I mean, there have been many aha moments, a lot of them to do with football, by the way, which I will not talk about. But, first of all, over the last few months, certainly, and even before that, I've come to realize what a privilege it is to be sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in. People complain all the time about how burnt out how terrible it is and how they've been put upon. I will tell you, as I was saying before, that being in American higher ed is to be it's certainly a position of privilege, but privilege in a good way, because these are amazing institutions. One way or the other, a set of institutions that got built are excellent at what they do. They're great at teaching, they're great at research, and so there is an enterprise here that needs protecting and preservation, and I come to it today feeling that I am at the right place at the right time, and to be allowed to do this job is actually really a privilege. I'll tell you a little bit about what the whole business of being president is all about. Deans and presidents are actually very similar in terms of the structure of our jobs, much more so than, say, a provost and a president. And the thing that I've realized about the presidency is that unlike almost any other job that I had in academics, this is really sort of an iconic position because you represent the university in a way that nobody else does. I mean, it's you are a symbol first and foremost, and you are sort of an overall condensation of what that university is about. And so being aware of that iconic position, it took me a while to understand that you are actually a symbol, and so you can't say everything that comes into your mind, certainly. And people rely on you to be an embodiment of that university or that community, and that is entirely different from being, a department chair or a professor or a student, and I come to realize that. So that's the thing. And the other big realization is that you're dealing with a much broader constituency than you ever did in any other role, by which I don't just mean campus. I mean, certainly you're dealing with a campus community that is extraordinarily diverse. I mean, I understand engineering really well, but I can tell you I don't understand the Department of History or Slavic languages or anything. And you come to this role, realizing how little you actually know and how much you have to learn. But you do also have a role across the entire state, all right? So, for example, at Oregon State, we are a land grant, and we've got a presence in every one of Oregon's counties. And Oregon, like so many states, is extraordinarily divided. So west of I-5 is blue as blue can be. Anybody from California would recognize Oregon. It's very familiar. East of I-5 is red as red can be, and extraordinarily unpopulated. So if you go driving there, you'd be amazed. I mean, it's just huge, huge farms and ranches, and people own these extraordinarily large enterprises. And it's not, just this farm or that homestead. It's this valley, that mountain, this river. They own entire landscapes. I mean, that's how sparse it is, and that's how big it is. Huge disparities, persistent rural poverty, and these, so you've got tech sitting in Portland, you got, semiconductors sitting there, and you've got this other population, and you have to span that entire universe, and that's a big lesson in itself.
I have to say that, and I know that you're spanning that whole landscape, because on social media one day I think I saw an image of you on a horse with a cowboy hat on.
Yes,
So.
yeah. So I do ride in the Pendleton Parade for all of those reasons. I've never ridden on a horse, and the horse knows it, of course. I mean, the most skeptical being in this entire parade is the horse, but that's really the story. I mean, I do it, and not only do I do it, my husband comes along, and my mother-in-law rode in the parade one year, only because we are committed to making that connection across, to make ourselves familiar, to make ourselves be seen, and to connect across this huge divide that we're all trying to span.
Yeah. Jayathi, thank you so much for the discussion, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.